I can remember saying was no sir, y'all got to have the wrong person. That's not me.
Welcome back to Advocacy Alchemy with Professor Ross. Today we have a good one, guys. Imagine waking up this morning behind bars, confused, afraid, and accused of a crime you didn't commit. Now imagine that you've been in jail for 5 months, all because of a typo in your last name. That's exactly what happened to Anthony Robertson, a man extradited from Ohio to Tennessee and locked up in the infamous 201 Popular facility for crimes he had no connection to. This case isn't just shocking, it's a full-blown indictment of systemic failures. Today's lecture takes us to a newscast from Memphis, Tennessee about the $5 million lawsuit that's raising serious questions about how our justice system handles identity, clerical accuracy, and accountability. I will say that we will keep a close eye on this one, being just right across the river from myself. All right, so with that, let's jump in.
A civil trial date is set now for the man who says he was held in jail for months because of a mistake over one letter in his last name. Last fall, FOX13 Investigates told you about Anthony Robertson, who was mistaken for Anthony Robertson, a man sitting in 201 Poplar with several rape charges and a bond over $1 million. Let's go to FOX13 investigative reporter Kayla Solomon. She's live at 201 Poplar tonight. So Kayla, this lawsuit is worth millions, you've learned.
Yeah, Daryl, and although it was filed months ago, as recently as this week, there have been new filings. Now, the biggest is attorneys for Anthony Robertson are asking the county to turn over documents that have to do with those court hearings, as well as his time spent in the Shelby County jail. But in response, Shelby County is saying since technically that record was expunged, a judge would have to order them to turn over the documents. But we now have an amended lawsuit that gives a clearer timeline of exactly how Robertson ended up in custody.
All I can remember saying was no sir, y'all got to have the wrong person. That's not me.
That's Anthony Robertson when he met with FOX13 last year. He was still dealing with the trauma, held in jail at 201 Poplar for 5 months for crimes he did not commit.
It was just like detrimental. Like it was sad. Like every day I got up, every day expected to lose my life in there on some charges that had absolutely nothing to do with me.
Since then, a lawsuit was filed against Shelby County and his former public defender. FOX13 Investigates obtained an amended version of that lawsuit that gives a clearer timeline of how Robertson was taken into custody. It started in October 2023 when Anthony Robertson was identified as a suspect for multiple sexual assaults. A warrant was issued for him and he was taken into custody by October 29th, 2023. Despite remaining in custody, a separate warrant was then issued for Anthony Robertson, who was living in Ohio at the time, in February 2024, 4 months later. He was extradited from Ohio to Shelby County in March, and days later, by March 6th, it says, Robertson began to experience the effects of his diminishing health, as well as stigmas and or fears associated with being charged with aggravated rape and especially aggravated kidnapping, including extortion in exchange for providing for his safety while incarcerated. Robertson remained in custody until July 4th, when his attorney and a judge admitted he was the wrong defendant. The lawsuit says that's also when Robertson was actually provided on the indictment sheet by said ADA, but was inaccurately recorded in the Shelby County Criminal Court clerk's file, which allegedly led to the issue of a warrant and subsequent arrest of plaintiff as the wrong person, and confirmed that plaintiff was released from custody on July 4th, 2024 at 8:30 p.m.
Now, Robertson and his attorneys are asking for $5 million in return. That trial date set for next summer. Daryl?
That is FOX13's Kayla Solomon live in downtown Memphis. Kayla, thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the laws at play here overall, and stick with me. All right, so first, let's talk about false arrest and wrongful imprisonment, just overall, all right? Because you have to keep in mind that he brought a federal lawsuit, so he didn't bring in state court. So we'll talk about some of those laws, but let's get some of the concepts down first. When you talk about false arrest and wrongful imprisonment under tort law and the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution, any seizure of a person must be based on some lawful authority. In this case, Robertson was arrested due to his mistaken identity to a person with a similar name. The other person's last name is Roberson, no T. Now, once the officers, prosecutors, and jail staff became aware that he might not be the correct person, but continued to detain him, that could constitute unlawful imprisonment. And that's the reason that he's been pushing through his lawyer to get the information. How many times has he told them how to spell his name? How many times has it been looked at where, okay, this isn't correct or something's wrong here? Number 2, due process violations under the 14th Amendment. The Constitution, and we're talking about the United States Constitution here, guarantees that no person shall be deprived of liberty without due process of law. All right, when somebody's held for months despite asserting their innocence and identity, that due process might have been denied. Okay, so the big issue here is that when he was taken into custody, there was already a bond that was set so high, he wasn't able to go back to court to make any assertions. And also, apparently he had a public defender that had been assigned to him, and that person wasn't listening either, man. Let's look at the extradition errors that were going on here. States extradite individuals under the Uniform Criminal Extradition Act. These procedures are meant to ensure that the person being transported is actually the correct individual named in the warrant. They also go through fingerprint matching, photo identification, biometric data, all that kind of stuff. Now, if that wasn't done here, could be some more civil liability or some violation of the extradition protocols. All right, let's move on to our next concept we need to talk about. It's malpractice. Robertson's lawsuit names his former public defender, suggesting a failure to adequately investigate his own identity, because I'm sure he told this person several times, my name is this. I was even out of state living somewhere else. I just happen to have once lived in Memphis. You know, who knows? His attorney's delay in alerting the court. I believe we need to do further investigation into who my client is. Please, court. All right. All of this opens the door for malpractice lawsuits or motions for the ineffective assistance of counsel. All right, moving on to his lawsuit. Now, his lawsuit is brought in federal court under 1983, and that's a civil rights claim. And it's claiming that he was deprived of certain rights that everyone has under the color of law. So he's saying that the government took action against him and took away some rights that everybody has. And this applies to anyone working under government authority. So you're talking about clerks, deputies, jailers. So it starts to hit a number of people. He's saying that, hey, everybody's in the wrong here. And these are all people who violated his constitutional rights, either deliberately or with reckless disregard. And with all that, it creates a liability and a potential for him to be compensated for what happened to him. That time he had to spend away, probably a job loss, all that stuff he'll be able to try to recoup through this action. All right, so with that, let's move into the evidentiary standards, because something had to go awry here, right? Let's take a look at them. Let's move through the 6 levels of evidence and see how each applies here, potentially. All right, first we have mere suspicion. Now, that's simply a hunch or gut feeling that something feels off, but the government has no basis to take any further action. Here, matching a last name isn't enough. A 1-letter difference without deeper verification barely raises to this level. And there's some reason behind that. In the court world, you see people all the time who try to use aliases and things of that nature. They'll spell their name just a little bit differently here than they do here. You see all kinds of stuff. This is not trying to make up for what happened here, because he did go to jail and he sat there. But let's discuss more in the comments, okay? Moving up to number 2, reasonable suspicion. This is when the government or the police have specific facts that suggest that criminal activity may be occurring. Now here, this might have justified temporary detainment, but not 5 months of incarceration. And you heard what the incarceration was for. The person that he was mistakenly thought of as was somebody who committed some sort of sexual battery. So that's not going to play well in jail with people who make threats against individuals who have those sorts of charges. That's a reality of the situation. Moving up a level, we have probable cause. This is when the government has reasonable grounds to believe a person committed a crime. This is also the level that must be met in order to receive an arrest warrant or to receive a search warrant signed by a judicial officer. Here, probable cause must be based on identity confirmation, not just paperwork. In this case, there was no probable cause once his identity couldn't be verified. They brought him all the way from Ohio to Tennessee, and they didn't have a hearing where they asked him a single question. Moving up one more level, we have preponderance of the evidence. This means more likely than not. Now, this level is used in civil cases, all right? For his civil rights lawsuit, his has made 51%. He must show it's more likely than not that the error directly led to his unlawful incarceration and he suffered damages. Moving up one more level, we have clear and convincing evidence. Now, this is also used in civil cases sometimes, but it's also used in family law cases and administrative law cases for certain actions like the termination of someone's employment or the loss of a certain license. Now, this level means that something is highly probable or substantially more likely than not. It takes about 75% of the evidence in your favor to win this type of case. Now, if a person was going to request punitive damages in a civil lawsuit, saying and asking the judge or the jury that I want you to punish this person. Not only was I damaged and I want that money, I want you also to charge them an additional set of money as punishment, and that's called punitive damages. Now, when you request those, you do have to make clear and convincing evidence. So Robertson's team is going to need to show reckless or malicious conduct by the officials, such as ignoring his pleas and failing to verify his identity. The issue with this case is that everybody just seems to follow their job. They're just cogs in a bigger wheel. And sometimes you have things like this to happen. Let's move on to our final one, beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, this is the standard for criminal conviction. This standard means that there is no other logical conclusion other than the defendant being guilty for the charges being brought. Now, Robertson never went to trial on that criminal case, all right? Now, but he's awaiting to go to trial on this civil trial in federal court. Now, if he had went to trial, this would have been the standard in that criminal case in Memphis. Now, logically, it seems like that standard should not have been met because he was not the person that was accused. But I promise you, I've seen cases go completely left. I've seen juries bring back things they can't. I've seen so much. There have been other cases of people who've been fully convicted, sat in prison for years, and then were exonerated sometime later. Some of the issues that this case is dealing with seem to be that they can't get information because as soon as they found out that there was a mistake and let him go on July 4th, they expunged that record, which means that they blocked that whole file and scooped it away somewhere else. All of it. All right, so with that, let's move into the jury perspective. Now let's step into the jury box. Let me ask you a few questions. Really think about these and tell me in the comments below what you think. First, would you believe that a man could be jailed over a typo and no one double-checked the information? Second, would you question why it took 5 months for someone to realize this was the wrong guy? We heard that he started having some health issues, so apparently he went to the infirmary, So there's so many people where he's been telling them, hey, I am not that person. Would you award $5 million for the trauma, humiliation, and danger that Anthony Robertson experienced? Think about that. If your name was one letter off from someone on the most wanted list, this could have happened to you. I went to law school with a guy named Mike Smith. So he's automatically on the no-fly list, and they check him every time who he is, and when he travels, it's harder. Mike C. Smith. There's a bunch of Mike C. Smiths out there, whether it's Mike Christopher or Mike Chad or whatever. Someone had the last name Rose instead of Ross, an E instead of an S, and I'm mistaken for someone. It's ridiculous. Comment below. Was this government negligence or just an unfortunate accident? This case begs us to trust our intuition. Robertson said from the beginning, this isn't me. Yet no one listened, not the police, not the jail staff, not even the court system for 5 long months. Now in law enforcement, intuition helps detect lies or confirm the truth. In legal practice, attorneys rely on instinct to dig deeper. In everyday life, your inner voice tells you something isn't right. So ask yourself, if you were an officer, an attorney, anyone involved, would your intuition have told you to double check? Would you have believed this man? This morning's story is a chilling reminder. The justice system, it shouldn't prioritize paperwork over people. Anthony Robertson lost nearly half a year of his life because someone didn't verify his identity. This wasn't a minor error, it was a failure at every level in the system. And now he's seeking accountability. He's asking, what's your freedom worth? What's your dignity worth? What's your time worth when stolen by the state? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you really think you would have caught that mistake? These types of mistakes are what really turn your hair gray when you work in the legal system. I'll tell you that much. Do you think $5 million is too much of an ask? Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, this is Advocacy Alchemy, and I am Professor Ross. I'll see you tomorrow. Be safe out there. Have a great day.
Please subscribe to Advocacy Alchemy for more lectures from Professor Ross.